702.
Live
On the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856.
92.7.
And 106 FM. Let's walk the talk.
Good morning. It's 7 minutes past 9. Thobela, welcome to the Clement Manyathela show. I'm Tshidi Madia, standing in for Clement today. I'll be with you today and tomorrow. Your beloved Major, as I understand he's called, will be back on air on Thursday, just before we break for the Easter. How are you for the Easters? How are you feeling today? I still feel like I'm generally a bright and sparkly person, and that's kind of where I'm at. I'm a little bit jumpy and anxious about the series of public holidays that are coming because I'm taking a break, and I love the idea of taking advantage of all those days. It's another busy day. It's been a busy week in the news cycle if you're paying attention. Today, I don't know if anyone's paying attention to this story, seen it, but Ace Makgashude, the expelled Secretary General of the ANC, his corruption trial is finally meant to kick off today. I mean, that matter has been with us for a day and then some, right? Think about it. It's followed for so long. That on record CD clip comes from the day he was suspended from the ANC, and that was maybe during COVID, the height of COVID, and only now is the matter going to trial. So we'll see what happens in that case. It's an asbestos matter in the Free State, stemming from his time as Premier. But I think the big talking point, the big talk in the country, at least for the past 24 hours, has definitely been the appointment of MTN board chair and former Deputy Finance Minister Mcebisi Jonas as the special envoy to the United States. I think it's been largely welcome. I think part and parcel of why this has been largely welcome is that he's seen as somebody capable. There are a lot of people who celebrate who and what Mcebisi Jonas represents, because our relationship with the US is at an all-time low. So I do want to know, what do you think, especially because the comments he made back in 2020 have come back to haunt him. Back in 2020, he called Donald Trump a homophobe, a narcissist, a right-winger. Hey, that was 5 years ago. At the time, it looked like Joe Biden was about to become president of the United States. POTUS 46. He was speaking as a private citizen even. Do you think it matters today? Do you think that Donald Trump will care even about what Mcebisi Jonas said back then? There's a lot of arguments that even those who are now in Donald Trump's cabinet had said a lot of unsavory things about the American president. I'll tell you what I think in just a bit. But also
702.
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
So news coming in, I think yesterday, just before the end of this show, President Cyril Ramaphosa's office announcing a new special envoy to the United States. Mcebisi Jonas was that pick. Jonas, never mind who or what you thought he was during his era in the Eastern Cape, because I always watch him and I always think, what an amazing rebrand, because what we understand now of Mcebisi Jonas is we associate him with state capture whistleblower. He's a former finance deputy minister. We speak about him and his relationship, his time rather at MTN. He's the current MTN board chair. I see a lot of people have welcomed this pick, saying, you know what? The positives is that this is a man that's seen as a businessman, and Donald Trump considers himself to be a savvy businessman, and that it might be easier to reach Trump's people, to have conversations with Trump's people about this, because South Africa has a responsibility, a mammoth task really, to repair relations with the United States at a time where we all kind of reckon that those relations are at an all-time low. But it didn't take long after the announcement from presidency about his speech. If I'm correct, I think I saw it from the SABC show and Bryce Peace, uncovering comments made by Jonas back in 2020. I want you to take a listen to this conversation. He was speaking at an Ahmed Kathrada lecture. He was giving a speech, from my understanding, at the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation It was captured. It is going viral. I've seen even the likes of Joel Pollack, who, as you know, was campaigning really hard to become an ambassador, a U.S. ambassador in South Africa, have picked up on these comments and started writing about them. So I won't be surprised if more and more of the U.S. commentators and press start speaking about these comments that were made by Mcebisi Jonas. I want you to take a listen to a little snippet of what he had to say.
Right now, the U.S. is undergoing a watershed moment, with Biden the certain winner in the presidential race against the racist, homophobe Donald Trump. How we got to a situation where a narcissistic right-winger took charge of the world's greatest economic and military powerhouse is something that we need to ponder over. It is something that all democracies need to ponder over.
He made those comments in 2020, at the end of 2020, when Donald Trump had failed in becoming POTUS 46. Joe Biden was about to become U.S. president. And it's kind of ironic how he said the world needs to ponder over how somebody like that, a homophobe, a right-winger, becomes a president of the world's most powerful, right, economic and military-wise. And surprise, surprise, Donald Trump finds his way back into the White House. And then today, we have the very same man, Mcebisi Jonas, being appointed as the go-in-between, as a special envoy. And it's important to recognize that this is not an ambassador. We still have to appoint somebody to replace Ibrahim Rasool. I think Bongani Bingo made an interesting point earlier on that the comments that Mcebisi Jonas made are actually far worse than what got Ibrahim Rasool declared persona non grata and kicked out of the U.S. Remember, Ibrahim Rasool said that Trump was leading. I don't want to remember. He said Trump had thrown out the basic rules. Yes, that's what he said. That Trump had thrown out the basic rules of engagement. They've been thrown out the window. He said that Trump was leading a white supremacist movement. He said he violated rules and disregarded conventions and undermined incumbency outside of America. But Mcebisi Jonas' comments goes right to the heart of the person. A narcissist, a right-winger, a homophobe. That's what he called him. Should these comments actually matter? And then there's another question that many have posed about what did our government know? Did they not do their due diligence? And there's a question of whether he should have been vetted. And I've heard a lot of people saying that a person like Mcebisi Jonas is at a point where you don't necessarily vet him. I'm not too sure. I have tried to get some people from presidency to speak to me, but a lot of them have said to me that they're in transit because today the president has a cabinet oversight in the Eastern Cape. So a lot of people saying that they're unable to come on and speak to me about what is their position on this, and to also answer some of these questions. I do take it that some of you have raised that some who are in Trump's cabinet, right, have also insulted the now U.S. president. I want you to think about Marco Rubio, who says a lot of unsavory things about South Africa. Terrible things are happening. He refused to come, of course, if you remember, to that first G20 foreign ministers meeting back in February. But I want you to hear what the Marco Rubio thought of Trump before becoming his Secretary of State. Take a listen.
Let me tell you something. I will never quit. I will never stop until we keep a con man from taking over the party of Reagan and the conservative movement. He's a con man. He's a con man. He's a con man. I'll tell you why. Number one, people are angry and frustrated and scared about the future. Okay? People are working in their lives and they're running in place. And he swoops in and is taking advantage of that. He's taking advantage of that. He's telling people, I'm going to fight for the little guy. I'm fighting for the working class. Here's what he doesn't tell them. He has spent a career in business, 50 years, sticking it to the little guy. Sticking it to the little guy. When his companies went bankrupt, the first people that didn't get paid were the subcontractors, the plumbers and the pipe fitters and the people that laid bricks and all those people that worked for a living. They didn't get paid. He got his money. They didn't get theirs.
A con man. Now, Marco Rubio today, no, is the Secretary of State on behalf of the man he declared as a con man. There's also weird thinking, on my part at least, that South Africans who believe that Trump must accept, or the Americans must engage Mcebisi Jonas on a basis of he was a private citizen and that those who serve the US president now have said worse things. But the rules will not be the same. The rules of engagement to little old South Africa, because you're not an exception, will certainly not be the same. I'm taking your calls on 011-883-0702, 072-702-1702. That's for voice notes and WhatsApps. Glenn in Bedford View, good morning to you.
Morning. I hope everybody's keeping well.
Yes, we are. What's on your mind?
Good. Right. I think that we mustn't mistake the fact that you could probably call Donald Trump whatever you want. That's not really where his ego is sitting right now. I think that the fight between South Africa and the United States has everything to do with what's going on in the Middle East and the ICJ. I think that we need to appreciate the fact that we've stoked a hornet's nest in that area and our friends in terms of affiliation towards the Middle East and which side we lie on, and in terms of a government stance and some of the relationships that are there. And I think that that's the biggest threat, and that the rest of this is being used as a pressure point. I think if South Africa wanted to get to the negotiation table, and I'm not saying that they should do this. I mean, the government, you guys in politics are far smarter than I am on this issue, but if they were to drop that ICJ, in my opinion, they could probably negotiate a 10-year investment by the U.S. government into South Africa. That's how sensitive that matter is to the American people, and I think that's a big thing. If you look at what they're doing with ICE in terms of all the students, anybody who stands up and talks about pro-Palestine, they want to get this is not economic, it's not ego. This is all about what's going on in the Middle East, and I think we need to be smarter to realize that our friends are not the American friends, and we're going to be under pressure indefinitely until somewhere along the line we make a decision, accept the pressure and stay our course. Alternatively, we need to put the South African economy first and say we're going to look after us first rather than looking after everybody else's interest and focus on there. And I think that would change the mind, and then again, rightfully or wrongfully, that's my opinion of why we're under the pressure that's there.
That's a fair point. I do think ICJ is a huge part of it, Glenn. But help me understand, you're thinking about backtracking, really. What will it make us look like to the rest of the globe? Do we worry about that? Or are the economic considerations so immense that backtracking and possibly compromising ourselves with our other partners, because we don't just do business. We don't just relate to the US. We have relations with many other nations. What will that make us look like to other nations? How difficult or how easy will it make our trade relations and other relations with other states?
Well, again, that's why I want to reiterate that this is not the area that I'm the smartest in to be able to sort out global politics. I think anybody who has those answers would be running the world, never mind the country. But I think that we need to make sure that we're not naive, and I think that this is where this is what we try and do is we try and fight on the principle of whether Donald Trump's a businessman. Anybody in business knows that you'll get called whatever you want by a million different people who have different opinions, and until the deal is there, it's water of the duck's back to a large degree. So I don't think that it's got to do with, I don't think that Jonas's previous statements would have there. If Jonas came out and said something along the lines of around that, there's a lot of sensitivity around the Palestine-Israel issue and everything. Should we choose sides? Again, it's not. I don't know. I'm not. There's too much at it.
Sure.
I'm not privy enough into all of that. But I do think that we've got to start looking at what's going to be best for the South African people. We got to feed our people, and it's great to be able to stand up for principles and everything else. But principles often don't put food on the table for the hungriest of the hungry.
All right.
And we need to also take that into consideration.
All right. Thank you so much. That's Glenn out in Bedford. And he's raising a point that many people make is South Africa and its value systems and its Ubuntu and its stance on Palestine there are people who've made that argument that maybe that needs to take a back seat and think about your own issues in the country where the economy is not growing, where people are languishing in poverty. And that is a question that many people raise time and again. And so the government needs to think about that. What's interesting for me is that when he raises the issue of people in the US, I spent time in Nevada as well as in Ohio. And you know what? Palestine is an issue for ordinary citizens. They don't agree with their government's posture. They don't agree with the support. They are quite vocal about what they think is wrong as far as Palestine is concerned. Sammy in Centurion, hi to you.
Hello, Tshidi. Tshidi, I really think our leaders need to stop this revolutionary mentality. these guys, they should have done a background check. It's either they knew about what as it said about Donald Trump, or they didn't. And if they didn't, it says a whole lot about them. And we just need to face the facts, City. Africa, we need America more than they need us. That is just a fact. So this whole thing of being hard-headed and saying, no, what about Marco Rubio had said? What about what this other had said about Donald Trump? Those people are Americans and they're Republicans. And it's CD. In as much as people don't want to admit this, those people are white. Mcebisi Jonas is black. Race plays a whole lot in this matter. Imagine if a white person had said something about Ramaphosa or about South Africa and he was being sent to our country. What are we going to speak?
South Africans are up in arms over comments made by AfriForum about ANC leaders. And a lot of people aren't big fans of the ANC and some of its leaders, but will take a stance. So, let me ask you this. Who then, if not Mcebisi Jonas, who would you have been satisfied with? And I think it's important to recognize that an envoy is not an ambassador. I think there's a bit of confusion, but I'll explain that in just a bit. Who, Sammy, would have satisfied you as a pick to help ease relations, to communicate, to be the messenger? Because that's what an envoy is.
Someone, that lady, who's that lady? She used to be, I think, the leader of Business Unity South Africa.
Busi Mavuso.
Yes, she's so, that I think she's level-headed, she's cool-headed, she doesn't have this thing of revolutionary mentality, whatever. She's about business. I think they should have sent her. Not Mcebisi Jonas knowing exactly what she had said about Donald Trump, no.
But Busi Mavuso has made some very strong and sometimes I think accurate comments about the ANC. And I think that's also the other issue, that this is an intersection between the politics, what governance requires, party space, people's reputation, egos, because she's made some very strong comments in the past about the ANC's leadership and how it's handled its role in governance. I'd imagine that she would not have been a pick. From my understanding, thank you so much. Sorry, I'll give you a chance. You can quickly have a say, Sammy.
No, but I remember what she had said about ANC, but she was telling the truth, was she not? Yes, Fair point. That's Semi out in Centurion. Thank you so much, Semi. There's also an argument that Mcebisi Jonas wasn't necessarily the president's first pick. I've asked people in the hallowed halls of the Union Building that how did you not know about these comments? Were you taken aback? Why would you not do your due diligence? And the responses have been quite interesting. Some of the responses have been, but J.D. Vance has said worse things. Of course, J.D. Vance, as you know, is the vice president of the U.S. I'd want you to listen very quickly to what J.D. Vance had to say. And then I'll just come back and tell you a little bit more of what I heard as some of the discussions around Mcebisi Jonas in the Union Buildings and why they were intent on going in this direction.
And so one of the takeaways is not just that the Republican Party base is somehow fundamentally flawed in a way that's unique in American political history. It's that Trump is a really bad candidate and, frankly, I think a really bad person.
Frankly, a really bad person. They kiki, they giggle. He's vice president. And the rules, as I keep saying, are not the same for them versus us. They're not the same. Just like an envoy is not the same as an ambassador who lives in a host country. An envoy, from my understanding, is Mutomo Roma. Why they come back? Luntu and Davidson, you also have a view on the special envoy. Good morning, Luntu.
Good morning, how are you?
Good, thank you. Go on.
Right, my view is quite simple, is that we could find the best of angels to send to America. It doesn't really matter, because the fact of the matter is that they know exactly what they are doing, because you can't say to me, you have now found a statement made by Mcebisi that was made 5 or 6 years ago in some innocuous meeting, but you don't know that there's no white genocide. So you do know that there's no white genocide. In fact, you know exactly what you are doing. So it's irrelevant. We can see South Africans discuss who do we send. It doesn't really matter, because you can't tell me America, with all of its intelligence, does not know that there are no bad things happening here. They know that there is no such a thing that is being peddled by the AfriForum and these other orgs. So they do know that it's not happening, but they continue saying it's happening. So it means that it's counterintuitive to anyone to suggest that there's anything that we as South Africans can do other than to drop the ICJ matter, which is basically the issue at hand. Anything else is just a smokescreen, and you're going to waste our time trying to act that you're going to do this, you're going to do that. It's really a waste of time.
You know what they want,
matter
what
is,
you're saying.
Yeah, as the first caller has said, that is the matter. So we can spend the next hour discussing that, whether we're dropping ICJ or we don't, because the rest of the other stuff is just a smokescreen and a waste of our time.
All right. Thank you. That's Lunto out in Davidson. I have very strong views around the issue of dropping an ICJ matter and what that makes us look like on the global stage. I don't think you can do that. But the questions that are being asked about the impact, the consequences, and whether you buckle down and take the pressure that comes with it. And we are seeing what that pressure looks like. It's a heavy toll that we are paying for that decision. And I don't think that there are enough nations that are willing to stand by our side. I know South Africa has gone back and forth around some of the enforcement orders, and I'm not sure if they'll go. I think they've gone 4 times maybe. I'm not sure if they'll continue. I don't know if they've lost their appetite, whether they recognize that now's the time to try and play it cool and to be a little bit quiet. I'm going to play some of your voice notes on this matter. Just take a listen.
Good morning, and good morning to everyone. I just wanted to actually just weigh in on this appointment of Mcebisi Jonas as a special envoy to the United States. And I think for me, the one concern is the fact that obviously he made those particular remarks in as far as the U.S. president is concerned. So I'm not sure if the president really thought this out, that this could be the person that could mend that, given what his impressions of Donald Trump are. And secondly, he's the current chair of MTN. And I think the one thing that for me concerns me is that MTN does business with Iran. Isn't Iran also a bit hostile to the United States and want that as well counting against him in trying to mend those particular relations? And this is Stephen here from Randburg.
Stephen, I love you because you raised a point that I've been flagging since yesterday. MTN's involvement with Iran. America and Iran have an acrimonious relationship that stems as far back as the 70s, 80s, from my understanding. No matter the administration, and I said it to Bongani earlier, no matter whether it's Democrats or Republicans, they will always have an issue with Iran. So our leadership in picking the chair of the board of MTN, when that's an issue, what do you think is going to happen? He's going to be welcomed with open arms, even by Congress, where some of the issues that are put on the table are attempts to review even the bilateral relationship. What is our government thinking is going to happen? I find that really difficult. And even that MTN matter, I recognize that it's been gone from pillar to post in Iran, in South Africa, in the United States as well. We'll speak to Kaya Suto just to get his own perspective as well on this issue, even though nothing really has been found wanting, because there's also levels and claims of that the Iranian deal was supposedly secured through bribes. That matter hasn't been proven to be true. But can you imagine what the Americans will do with it? Yeah? So why pick a person with even more controversies, more clouds? Now you're not dealing with the issue you're trying to resolve. Now you must deal with the credibility of the character that you've appointed. What thought process, huh? I'm so confused. Fiso has your headlines before I get into that.
Digital FSP.
702
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
936 Tshidi Madia in for Clement Manyathela. We are absolutely discussing Donald Trump today. Yet again, he tends to dominate, doesn't he? News of the world, news in our country. Of course, is on the back of news that President Cyril Ramaphosa has appointed former Deputy Finance Minister, businessman as well, Mcebisi Jonas, as the first special envoy to the U.S. Remember at the State of the Nation address in February when the president said, "We will not be bullied." He then said he'll send a series of special envoys to the U.S. and the continent to explain South Africa's position as far as its foreign policy is concerned. Part and parcel of that was the issue of the disinformation that was happening at the time, that continues to happen. And I think one of the callers said earlier that it's not like the U.S. is incapable of finding out what's actually happening in this country. They're doing it deliberately. And at some point today, in a bit, I'll raise the issue of the countries that are willing to cut a deal, because what they're looking for are deals. Trump has made that very clear, that the pause on the reciprocal tariffs is in part because he wants deals. At the time, he had said over 75 countries. You know who else was trying to cut a deal? Lesotho. Are you paying attention to what Lesotho's doing? So we'll talk about that. But I do want your thoughts on Mcebisi Jonas. And what did they know? What did they not know? The comments that he made at the Kathrada lecture, the comments that he made at the Kathrada Foundation, the late Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, the comments that he made calling Trump a homophobe, a right-winger, a narcissist. Will those come back to bite him? But again, he's chair of MTN. MTN does business in Iran. So I was trying to understand all of those intersections and what these could mean. But most importantly, how we ought to look at this particular appointment. So I spoke to Kaya Sithole, social commentator, to get his thoughts. Kaya often puts the pieces together, 1 + 1, financially, of what makes sense or what doesn't make sense. Take a listen. So we speak now to Khaya Sithole. Good morning, Kaya. Welcome to Radio 702. Let's speak about this pick. Mcebisi Jonas is a businessman. Donald Trump seemingly likes those. Is this a good pick of the messenger, the envoy, in your opinion, for South Africa?
I think in the context of where we are and clearly how open to engaging with people who have a business profile that Donald Trump is, this is as good as pick as we can get in this particular context. And I think obviously what we also need to be aware of is that the scope of the envoy's job tends to be limited by design, but also deeper in the sense that he will obviously identify what the key points of deliberation need to be in order to really find a pathway into the White House and those that are close to the president in the White House, and then focus on those. An ambassador, on the other hand, would have obviously adopted the more general scope of what an ambassadorial role is, and we're obviously still expecting South Africa to appoint one, but I think the envoy will be able to focus on the more contentious issues and have a much deeper focus there in the interim while we're waiting for the normalization of all other diplomatic relationships.
People have raised, Sharon Bryce Peace pointed out that this particular pick has made unsavory comments. Let's call them unsavory comments. But I think, depending on who you ask, very honest assessment really of Donald Trump, which Donald Trump is likely to not take to. But I took issue with the intersection between Mcebisi Jonas, who's chair of MTN, and the intersection with Iran. And I thought I felt it was quite curious that the president would pick somebody with a matter that's still pending, and a matter, from my understanding, that is shrouded in allegations of bribery and corruption. And again, it's Iran. America is not a fan of Iran.
Yeah. So I think in relation to the first aspect relating to the comments that he made ahead of the 2020 U.S. presidential election, I think in that context he was obviously a private citizen, and it would be very difficult to find an honest commentator, an honest political commentator who hasn't had some interesting things to say about Donald Trump since 2016. I think anyone who observes politics and is honest in their engagement would have highlighted a lot of issues in relation to Donald Trump's conduct and to Donald Trump's campaigning over the past few years. So I don't think we're going to find many people out there who haven't had something to say about Donald Trump, including members of his now cabinet. It's clearly been a very polarizing political history since Donald Trump decided that he was going to run for Panza in politics, and indeed succeeded twice. So I think Mcebisi Jonas is just like any other commentator out there who has had personal views in his capacity as a private individual. But obviously at this particular point in time, you imagine that some American commentators and some American observers will definitely pick that up, and whether they want to weaponize it against them is something that we cannot control. It's something that we just have to observe. On the question of the Iran and MTN issue, it is indeed a pending matter. But I think what is quite interesting about it is that it's a matter that's been going on for over 20 years now, ever since MTN obviously won the right to operate in Iran in around 2005. And clearly, what has become the issue is that this matter has been prosecuted not only in Iran, also in the United States, also in South Africa, and at every turn, MTN has come out on top. And I think at the core of it is the realization that those that are alleging that wrongdoing was done by MTN are struggling to find a court that will entertain the jurisdiction. So you'd imagine that, well, if it all happened in Iran, then Iran should be dealing with it. But the Iranian authorities have said, well, they actually take no interest in the matter. They do not think that anything wrong was done. MTN has conducted its own independent investigation, and they also said that nothing was done. So it does look, unfortunately, that 20 years later, at some point in time, we have to question whether this case would ever go anywhere. And I think in the United States, we do know that it is now an administration where snippets are used and weaponized against individuals that are not palatable. So I don't think it is inconceivable that at some point in time somebody will try to elevate that to be a point of deliberation or a point of contesting Mcebisi's appointment. But I think at this stage it is a matter that predated him. It is a matter that he has actively tackled in his capacity as the chair of the board. And it is a matter that MTN has not shied away from. So whenever they've been called to account in any court, whether it's in Iran or the United States or even South Africa, they've been there and they've said, look, these accusations are baseless, and it remains so until a particular court firstly identifies a jurisdiction, which is where the case is still stuck 20 years later, and then it tries the basis of the allegations against known facts.
That's a very interesting one because, I think one would imagine if Trump applied common sense or if the rules mattered, it wouldn't be. But if that was the case, then the disinformation campaign is on against South Africa would not be part of the conversation. Are there any considerations that you have around the timing? South Africa had kind of wanted to be quiet and observe for a little while. I think a week ago, in the middle of this tariff war, they had taken a posture to kind of pause. And they will take their time, it's clear, on picking somebody who will replace Ibrahim Rasool. Any thoughts around the timing of when this envoy is being announced and being picked?
Yeah, I think it's quite important that the appointment is happening now because you can imagine that within the scope of issues that need to be addressed, the question of the economic relationships is a very important one. And when you look at what the tariff war has done, it has forced some countries to then redeliberate on what type of trade relationship they want to have with the United States. So it's actually a priority number one issue. And what you want to be able to do is that if the president already had a particular preliminary list of envoys that he wanted to dispatch there, the one who was going to be tasked with the economic relations was clearly the priority one, and therefore that's why this appointment has been accelerated ahead of the others. And we're obviously expecting more to be announced because, again, there are so many moving parts to this relationship. We want to make sure that they're all tackled at the appropriate level. So I do think that it was indeed rushed by the fact that there is an escalation of a war and clearly there will be casualties. It's now a matter of just managing those casualties on behalf of South African citizens.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Kaya.
All right.
So that was a conversation I had with social commentator Kaya Sithole, speaking about that MTN issue, and interestingly enough saying that this is a safe pick as far as Mcebisi Jonas is concerned, that an envoy, and I think it's an important thing to recognize, and it's an important distinction to make for people, that an ambassador and an envoy are not the same, right? In essence, yes, they both ultimately account to the president, but an envoy, in essence, in its truest sense, an envoy is a messenger. An ambassador is definitely more high-ranking. They also present credentials. Remember, we are waiting for the US's ambassador to arrive here. Some angry South Africans believe that those credentials should be rejected, but they serve in a longer duration in their capacity as a diplomat. They also stay in their host country. The envoy is meant to hold a series of meetings. It's a short, temporary assignment. They're going to deal with particular issues. Kaya saying Mcebisi Jonas, in this case, will be able to deal with contentious issues quite quickly. You know, as I said, the other also lives in the host country while the other one moves between their base, which is their country, and where they are assigned from time to time. I don't know if Mcebisi Jonas will be welcome and also what he'll find. Because remember, Ibrahim Rasool, when he was booted out, declared persona non grata, said that part of the difficulty is that the State Department is not fully set up, that there is no Africa office or Africa secretary. So you also don't know which door you're actually going to knock at to be heard. Is it a matter of going to Congress? I don't know. There's some who are putting in a review of the bilaterals even, never mind AGOA. Just the relationship itself has now become a problem for some in Congress. So it's a very difficult place that he'd need to navigate. I want to go to your WhatsApps and voice notes now. 0727021702. If you want to chat to us, 011-883-0702.
Hi, Tshidi. You know, Mcebisi Jonas, by going to the US, you know, Donald Trump is going to toy with him. I'm telling you. My advice to him is that why don't they get someone, not this man, because Donald Trump is going to tear him apart. I'm telling you. So if I were him, I would just stay at home. Finish and clear. Taru from Deep Roof.
Hi, Tshidi and 702. With regards to Mr. Jonas being appointed, I think it again shows the incompetence of the ANC, because they just don't read the room properly. You cannot send someone to meet Donald Trump who has said things about him. He's just not that kind of a person who's going to forgive you. It's almost like going to a job interview. You kind of got to tell them what they want to hear because you at their mercy, if you like. It's just poor management by the ANC. And just one other thing, you spoke of Mr. Jonas being a businessman. He's not a businessman. There's absolutely nobody in the ANC who are successful businessmen. They are just people with positions and power who have been given positions in companies because they can influence things and get things done for you. They are not businessmen. They have never created a business. There is no one successful business being run by an ANC-backed businessman which is not part of corruption. If they don't have corruption in them, they're not successful. Thank you. It's Sanjay. Bye.
Yo, MJ. But you sound like Bongani Pingo, who said, what businessman are you all referring to? What businessman? And that's the other thing. To me, part of what this is for Mcebisi Jonas is his bid at becoming number one. Do you remember he had a book after the dawn, what will happen, where he tried to kind of set out a scenario of what will happen next. So I think wanting to serve the nation as well speaks to an ambition I think he deep down kind of sort of has to become number one. But I take that very strong criticism. I wanted to speak about Lesotho. We'll get your thoughts at least. Because I think Lesotho is attempting to scramble it. It's scrambling at least, trying to cut the deal. Remember, Trump also, as much as he says horrible things about us, had very little to say said nothing good about Lesotho, saying that the US has spent around $8 million to promote LGBTQI plus in a country, as he said, not my words, is that nobody ever heard of. Then he slapped them with a 50% tariff on all imports from Lesotho. So from my understanding, and I remember, I don't know if you saw that story where it was alleged that officials from Lesotho were scrambling. High-ranking Lesotho officials were trying to cut the deal. This is when he had that pause. And part of that memo that was sent out, I think last week from the U.S. Embassy in Maseru, said that government's effort to stay on the good side of American president would try, just to make sure that they don't come into his crosshairs. But part of this was pledging to buy more goods from the U.S. The officials apparently also tried to say that they would also take in what they've seen, supposedly, as so-called undesirable immigrants, take them to Lesotho. And I think that's an issue. Obviously, Lesotho is a landlocked country. It is here. So I don't know if anybody's watching what's happening around Lesotho. There's also, it will also grant Elon Musk Starlink an operating license. So it seems that Lesotho is doing everything it can to not be where South Africa is. I don't think people want to be treated the way South Africa is treated. I want to take a quick break and come back to more of your voice notes.
Always.
Let's walk the talk.
702.
9:52, taking your calls. We are discussing the appointment of Mcebisi Jonas as the special envoy to the US. Stephen there earlier saying, not Stephen, I think it was MJ, saying that what businessmen come from the NC? You hostile. Stephen and Centurion, good morning to you.
Yes, ma'am. I just feel sorry for Mcebisi Jonas. He's a very good guy, but he's coming from a polarized country, and he's going to deal with somebody who really is unpredictable. It's not for him. From where he comes from here in South Africa, we are much divided. The guy just called now. You can hear behind what he's saying. He's saying, this is black person. You will never make it. There's nothing good that can come from a black man. That's what he's saying. He just hides behind ANC. There's no one from ANC that can be a businessman. But it's just...
That is not true. We know that's not true.
Yeah, that's what he said. It's just coming from the racial mentality. He just wants... He didn't just want to come clear to say he's a black. He said, no, he's coming from the ANC. There's no black ANC president. it's just polarized, coming from a polarized country, and there they mustn't go there try to please the Donald Trump. They must just present their case, and then because it's not about whether the South Africa or what, it's about Israel. That's all.
Stephen,
and the race, these people now in South Africa, most of them are very angry, especially those racist people. They are very. I'm not saying white are racist, but they are racist people.
No, you can't ignore that they are.
Angry. They're angry because it just happened not to be white. You hear your caller, last caller.
Stephen, there are. Hold on. Yeah. Stephen, we can't deny that there are racial dynamics. That's part and parcel, unfortunately. Let me finish. That's part and parcel of the South African story, unfortunately. But you also can't necessarily blame somebody who questions the credibility of people linked to the ANC. That's also the ANC's own doing. Hold on, let me finish. Emma Hanyani, I'm going to give you a chance. You also can't blame people who question the ANC and the credibility of people linked to the ANC. The ANC's got a lot of good people. I think it's very important to flag that. But the ANC's also got a reputation that it helped to create that makes people question its credibility. I mean, Bongani Pingwa is a black man. Is one of us, and he said, what business? And part of the reason why you would have said that is because Mcebisi Jonas was Deputy Finance Minister. Then he went to work, I think, for Magda's Insignia before ending up at MTN. So for people, they will question someone like that. And I don't think that we have to take issue with it, but I recognize the other issue that you are flagging around race. That's part and parcel of the unfortunate story of the South African tale, because our history is very much alive with us to date. But I take what you're saying.
No, I understand you, man. But I don't think there's really a person that you can say this one will go and deal with Donald Trump. Because if you go from that angle of being saying, you will never get to Donald Trump. It's not about that. The issue, I think, it's just angry about the issue.
Oh, sorry. I think I kind of sorry. Yes.
Yes, thanks, man. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. That's Stephen Arton Centurion. Vusi in Germiston. Hi.
Hi, Tshidi. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you. You also have a proposal of who could be a good person to send as an envoy to the U.S.?
I think Ruel Khoza fits the requirement of the person who can deal in a matter like this.
Actually, yes.
We are talking about a prolific leader and writer and businessman with a serious track record.
I'll take that. Thank you. That's actually a great suggestion. I've met Ruel Khoza. He's a bit older. I mean, he's in his 70s, if I remember. But he still drives himself around. He's got quite a lot of energy. And you're right, actually, in terms of being an astute business mind, and also who cares and wants to serve the country and is a patriot. Because what you also require at a moment like this is somebody who wants the best for the country. Where we want to move the country has to not be lost on whoever you send. Thank you so much. That's Vusi out in Germiston there for that comment. I want to come back to more of your voice notes.
Hello, morning, TD. I think we ascribe a lot to Donald Trump. I don't think he's that. I mean, he considers himself a businessman, like you say. But what does his track record say? What does history say about it? He's failed numerous times. He has liquidated companies. He has been found to have lied about his portfolio, about his net worth. So I don't think he's that shrewd as we consider him. I think we give a lot of credit to Donald Trump more than he actually deserves. Mcebisi Jonas is fit. He's diplomatically savvy. He's capable. He's shrewd. He's fit for that position. I think Donald Trump is just another guy who happens to cross serendipity in becoming U.S. president. Prince, better view.
Thank you so much for that, Prince. That the issue at the heart of this is the man leading the United States, and what we require as a nation from the U.S. in order for our nation to thrive. This is a significant trade partner. They have a say. They are important. No matter what our personal views are about the man at the helm, he was elected via democratic process. That's also something we have to contend with. It's 9:58. Let's take a break. Thank you for your input.